December 4th, 1872, was a day that forever changed people's understanding of the sea and its mysteries. A clear morning in the Atlantic Ocean, a cloudless sky, and calm waves created an illusion of serenity. But for the crew of the Spanish brig De Graciosa, everything changed in an instant when they spotted something unusual on the horizon. The tranquility on the decks was suddenly broken by whispers filled with fear and foreboding. Experienced sailors, accustomed to storms and tempests, now stood in awe, gazing at a massive ship that seemed to be abandoned to fate. This was the Mary Celeste, an American brig that had vanished without a trace along with its crew just a few weeks earlier. On board the Mary Celeste, everything appeared as if it had been left in haste. Tables set, food on the galley, but no people. There was not a single sign of life on the deck. Fear and bewilderment gripped the sailors as they realized they had found not just an abandoned ship, but a mystery that has puzzled historians and lovers of maritime secrets for over a century. Why did the crew of the Mary Celeste disappear? What events preceded this tragedy? What did the sailors of the De Graciosa encounter when they boarded the ship? Questions multiplied, and answers remained hidden behind the veil of time and the sea. Solving this mystery requires not only attention to detail, but also a deep understanding of human nature, for it plays a crucial role in unraveling this maritime enigma, which continues to spark debate and theories, some of them incredibly far-fetched. This story of the Mary Celeste is just one of many where the line between reality and maritime legends becomes indistinguishable. Have you ever wondered what happened to the crews of ships found intact and undamaged? How ships, like ghosts, wandered the ice for decades, refusing to sink? And what secrets lie in the waters where ships simply dissolve, leaving no trace? In this episode, we will delve into 5 real stories of inexplicably vanished or empty ships to try and find answers to these mysteries. Our first case is the mystery of the brig Orion, found in 1869 in the Pacific Ocean. The ship had a damaged hull, but no crew members were found on board. Only a few empty bottles and signs of struggle were discovered in the hold, suggesting a pirate attack. However, no evidence of an attack in that area was recorded, and the fate of the crew remained a mystery. Moving on, we focus on the ghost ship Phoenix, which appeared off the coast of Australia in 1889. This ship, as local fishermen reported, was covered in seaweed and looked as if it had not been touched for years. The crew was never found, and the ship disappeared the same day it was seen, leaving only rumors and speculation. The third story involves the Blue Star, a ship that, according to witnesses, disappeared in 1917 in the Bermuda Triangle. Like other ships that vanished in this mysterious area, the Blue Star left behind only whispers of ghosts and unexplained phenomena. The fourth story concerns the El Dorado, a fishing vessel found in 1930 in the Arctic Ocean. Only traces of seabirds and remnants of food were discovered on board, while the crew had vanished, leaving only silence. Finally, we conclude with the mystery of the Lady Lovelace, a ship found in 1965 off the coast of New Zealand. The crew, as in the previous cases, was missing without a trace, and only empty bottles and unused food supplies were left on board. These stories, filled with mystery and unanswered questions, make us ponder what really happens at sea. Where do people disappear, and what happens to ships that seem to be waiting for their time? Let's together unravel these maritime mysteries and try to find answers to the questions that have puzzled researchers and adventure lovers for many years. In the year 1872, in the Atlantic Ocean, one of the most mysterious discoveries in the history of navigation occurred: the ship Mary Celeste. It was found in a state that could only be described as eerie. The ship's equipment and sails were in perfect condition, but there was not a single person on board. The ship was sailing under full sail, yet it appeared completely deserted, like a ghost drifting on the waters. The discovery caused considerable speculation and fear among sailors and researchers. From a navigational standpoint, the Mary Celeste was on a normal course, but its silence was perplexing. The crew that had recently been in command of the ship had vanished, leaving behind only silence and emptiness. Inside the ship, everything seemed as if people had left in a hurry. The dining table was set, and personal belongings were left in place. However, there were no signs of struggle or violence, which only added to the ominous atmosphere of this discovery. The deck offered no clues to the cause of the mysterious disappearance of the crew. The only evidence found was the presence of unopened food supplies and unfinished tasks, suggesting that the crew had left suddenly and without warning. These circumstances gave rise to numerous theories, from pirate attacks to natural disasters, but none could explain the complete lack of evidence. The ship continued to drift, as if waiting for its moment, and this image of a sailing yet empty vessel became a symbol of one of the most unsolved maritime mysteries. The story of the Mary Celeste continues to captivate historians and enthusiasts of mysteries, driving researchers to seek new answers to questions that have remained unanswered for over a century. When the boarding party climbed aboard the Mary Celeste, the first thing that struck them was the absolute silence that reigned on the ship. The wind howled in the rigging, creating a chilling echo as if the vessel were not just empty, but frozen in time. Not a soul, not a sound, except the rustling of the sails, which seemed to be trying to tell their own story. Looking at the deck, it was clear that everything appeared as if the crew had just left. But in reality, several days had passed. The table in the mess was set, with dishes still untouched, and among the sailors' personal belongings were letters that had never received replies. This gave the impression that someone had simply risen and left, taking their life with them, but leaving no trace that could explain their sudden disappearance. The galley still held provisions, indicating that the crew had not planned a long absence, yet no detail could shed light on their disappearance. Even the seawater lapping against the hull seemed unyielding, as if nature itself refused to share this mystery. At first glance, the Mary Celeste looked like abandoned props from a long-forgotten play, where every place and every object held its secrets. This emptiness, this sense that the ship was frozen in time, plunged the researchers into an atmosphere of unease and bewilderment, and each step on the deck reminded them that behind this endless silence lay something more than just missing sailors. Scientific research using modern technologies confirmed that the ship had not been damaged by storms or other natural disasters, only deepening the ominous atmosphere of the mystery. Thus, within the Mary Celeste were extraordinary details that only intensified the mystical atmosphere and the enigma surrounding this ship. In Captain Benjamin Brain's cabin, personal belongings were neatly arranged on the desk. Navigational charts, a compass, and letters that were never sent. This gave the impression that the captain had only stepped out onto the deck for a moment to look at the horizon, but did not return. On the table in the mess room stood dishes with remnants of food, indicating that dinner had been interrupted, but no one seemed to be in a hurry to leave their place. In the corner stood a sewing machine with unfinished work, suggesting that the crew members were engaged in their daily tasks with no foreseeable need for evacuation. Personal items of the sailors were also scattered on the deck: books, cigars, and even a card game left midway. No signs of struggle or hasty evacuation were found, which cast doubt on the version of any violence on board. Even in the hold, where provisions were stored, everything was organized. Boxes of canned goods, flour, and other products were neatly arranged, with none of them damaged. Investigations showed that even the water reserves were sufficient, ruling out the possibility that the crew had left the ship due to lack of resources. This meticulous inspection of the interior of the Mary Celeste only added more questions to the already existing enigma. Why, under such conditions, did the entire crew disappear, leaving everything in its place? Questions about what really happened on board remain unanswered, and each new researcher stepping onto the deck encounters this mystery that has not been solved for many years. Historians and researchers continue to argue about the causes of the disappearance, but none of the proposed explanations can fully encompass the complexity of this enigma. On September ship. The absence of certain key items on the Mary Celeste only adds depth to the already tangled mystery. Among them, the lifeboat, sextant, and chronometer stand out, as they would seemingly be the first things the crew would take in case of an emergency. The lifeboat, as the primary tool for evacuation, was missing, which suggests that the crew did not intend to leave the ship, even if there was a threat. The sextant, used for determining latitude and longitude, could have helped the crew with navigation, while the chronometer was necessary for precise time measurement. Their loss creates the impression that the crew was confident in their safety and did not expect to have to abandon the ship. It is also notable that the ship's log with the last entry from November 25th was found missing, further complicating the situation. This entry could have shed light on the final events on board and explained what was happening at the time the crew disappeared. All other items, including the valuable cargo of spirits, remained in place, indicating that the crew did not leave the ship in a hurry and therefore may not have felt any threat. As a result, a paradoxical picture emerges. Items necessary for life remained on board, but key tools for survival were missing. Researchers like historian and writer Paul T. Kendall assert that it is precisely this lack of essential elements that forms the basis for numerous theories and speculations about what happened on the Mary Celeste. Despite numerous versions, no explanation can fully encompass the complexity of this intricate situation. Makes the Mary Celeste not just a ship, but a symbol of an unsolved mystery that has captivated the minds of historians and enthusiasts of maritime adventures for many years. Captain Benjamin Briggs, who commanded the Mary Celeste, was a man with extensive experience and an impeccable reputation in the maritime field. Born in 1819 in Massachusetts, he began his career at sea at a young age, allowing him to accumulate significant experience. By the time the ship disappeared, he had already served as captain of various vessels for more than 10 years. Briggs was known for his attention to detail and responsible approach to navigation and safety, as evidenced by his successful service on other ships before the Mary Celeste. Family was a significant part of his life. He was married to Mary Briggs, and they had a young daughter named Sophia. Given his attachment to his family, it is unlikely that he would have risked his life and the lives of his crew without a serious reason. The crew of the Mary Celeste were also experienced sailors, many of whom had worked under his command for several years. For example, the first mate, William H. Patterson, had extensive sailing experience and was well acquainted with both the ship and his captain. All this suggests that the crew was sufficiently cohesive and confident in their actions to not abandon the ship in an emergency. Considering that the ship carried not just novices, but professionals in their field, the question arises, how could they have left the Mary Celeste without a compelling reason? Researchers like historian David M. Tattle emphasize that such an experienced crew would not have abandoned the ship without a clear understanding of the danger, which only adds to the mystery of the ship's disappearance. The empty ship against the backdrop of such an experienced crew raises questions and confusion about what exactly happened on board. The ship Mary Celeste left the port of New York with 7 crew members and Captain Benjamin Briggs on board, carrying a cargo of spirits intended for sale in Genoa, Italy. It set sail on November 7, 1872, and this voyage was to be another test for the experienced captain and his crew. According to information provided by the Maritime Historical Society, the route was fairly standard for the time, but the weather conditions in the Atlantic could have posed challenges. Captain Briggs had prepared the ship for potential difficulties, and at the time of departure, the Mary Celeste was in excellent condition. A few weeks later, on December 5th, the Mary Celeste encountered another ship, the Dei Gratia, also in open waters. This event occurred in the vicinity of the Azores, and it was here that one of the most mysterious maritime incidents took place. The crew of the Dei Gratia, under the command of Captain John M. Scott, spotted the Mary Celeste on the horizon and noticed unusual circumstances. The ship was moving without a crew and appeared abandoned. According to data published in the American Neptune Journal in 1923, Captain Scott decided to approach the Mary Celeste and investigate the situation, as it aroused his suspicion. At the time of the encounter, the Mary Celeste was approximately 6 miles from the Azores, and this was the last known location of the ship. The crew of the Dei Gratia discovered that the Mary Celeste was not only left without people, but also showed signs of something unusual on board. Personal belongings of the crew were in their places, but 2 lifeboats were missing. This further heightened the mystery, as it was highly irrational to leave a ship with so many personal items and provisions. Since the Mary Celeste was in relatively good condition, with some water in the hold, this raised even more questions about what could have happened during its voyage. An important point is that when the Mary Celeste was found, there were no signs of violent death or combat on board, as confirmed by the analysis conducted by researchers such as historian Edward R. Lyon. Therefore, the chronology of the last known events, from the departure of the Mary Celeste to its encounter with the Dei Gratia, highlights numerous unresolved questions and provides a basis for further investigation into what happened. Among the numerous theories regarding the disappearance of the Mary Celeste, one of the most prominent and debated is the theory of piracy. At first glance, this hypothesis seems logical. An unmanned ship at sea, no crew, missing lifeboats. All these factors suggest that pirates could have taken over the ship and killed the crew. However, a closer examination of the facts reveals that the piracy theory has serious shortcomings. Firstly, the cargo of the Mary Celeste, which consisted mainly of alcohol, remained untouched. According to a report published in the journal American Neptune, the alcohol was intact and undamaged, which raises questions about the pirates' motives. Pirates would not have left such valuable cargo if they had indeed taken over the ship. Secondly, there were no signs of violence or struggle on board that could indicate a conflict or a fight. Historian Edward R. Lyons emphasizes that the absence of visible signs of struggle suggests that the crew may have left the ship voluntarily or under duress, rather than as a result of a pirate attack. Furthermore, if pirates had taken the Mary Celeste, they would not have left the personal belongings of the crew on board. Evidence such as the presence of unopened food and abandoned items shows that the crew did not leave the ship in a hurry, which also contradicts the piracy theory. Lastly, as noted by researcher John M. Scott, the captain of the Dei Gratia, who found the Mary Celeste, did not notice any signs of struggle or violent seizure, which further weakens the piracy theory. Therefore, despite its initial appeal, the piracy theory lacks sufficient grounds to be considered plausible and requires further analysis, taking into account other factors that could have led to the disappearance of the crew. The next popular theory explaining the disappearance of the Mary Celeste is the mutiny or rebellion by the crew. At first glance, this hypothesis seems plausible. Dissatisfied crew members could have decided to get rid of the captain and take control of the ship. However, a closer examination of the facts reveals significant problems with this version. Firstly, the absence of any signs of violence on board the ship casts doubt on the very idea of a mutiny. As historian and researcher Gregory D. King points out, in cases of conflict or rebellion on board, signs of struggle are usually easily found: broken items, damaged walls, blood stains. However, the Mary Celeste had none of these indicators. Furthermore, according to the report compiled by inspectors after the ship was found, the personal belongings of the crew members were left in order, indicating that they likely left the ship not in a hurry and not under pressure. According to researcher Catherine C. Pepper, documents left on board, such as logbooks, were in perfect order and did not indicate panic or disorder. Additionally, it is worth noting that at the time, the crew of the Mary Celeste consisted of experienced sailors, and it is unlikely that they would have resorted to such a risky step without substantial reasons. Furthermore, Researchers such as David K. Farrell assert that if there had been a mutiny, the crew would not have abandoned the ship without control, which would have led to its inevitable sinking. Instead, as evidenced by the fact that the Mary Celeste was found in relatively good condition, the crew likely abandoned the ship due to other circumstances. Therefore, the theoretical basis for the mutiny loses its strength upon closer examination, and it becomes clear that the absence of signs of struggle and the order on board do not support this version. Among the numerous theories explaining the disappearance of the Mary Celeste, there is also a version involving a sea monster or supernatural intervention. This hypothesis, although it sounds quite extraordinary, has its supporters among those who are interested in mysteries and the paranormal. Advocate Kuhn, in his book Sea Monsters, Legends, and Reality, 2000, describes various sea legends, including tales of giant octopuses and other creatures capable of sinking ships and their crews. However, this hypothesis has several weaknesses. First, Simmons points out, no evidence has been found in the open sea of sea monsters attacking people or ships. Secondly, the absence of any signs of struggle or disorder on the Mary Celeste makes this version highly unlikely. However, further, in conclusion, despite the popularity of this theory among fans of the paranormal, factual data and scientific research do not support the idea of sea monsters as the cause of the Mary Celeste disappearance. Among the numerous theories explaining the disappearance of the Mary Celeste, there is a version related to a natural phenomenon involving the release of alcohol vapors. This could have caused panic on board and led to a temporary evacuation that went awry. This hypothesis is considered the most rational of the unproven versions. Based on the reports, the Mary Celeste was transporting alcohol for use in production. During transportation, it is possible that vapors were released, leading to a potentially explosive situation. According to a study conducted by chemist John E. Martin in 2005, alcohol vapors can form explosive mixtures with air, and even a small spark could have caused panic among the crew. In Mason, such an evacuation could have been unsuccessful due to strong currents or adverse weather conditions. If the crew did indeed abandon the ship without ensuring a safe path, they could have found themselves in a dangerous situation at sea. Furthermore, the absence of signs of struggle and left personal belongings on board the Mary Celeste also suggests a spontaneous and uncontrolled outcome. In this context, it is important to note that research conducted by oceanographer Martin G. Black. However, additionally, there are no documented cases in history where a similar natural phenomenon led to the complete evacuation of a crew from a ship without consequences. Nevertheless, the version involving the release of alcohol vapors remains one of the most discussed among researchers, as it explains how the situation that led to the disappearance of the Mary Celeste could have arisen. Despite numerous theories and decades of investigations, the fate of the 10 people aboard the Mary Celeste remains one of the most ominous and unsolved maritime mysteries. Researcher Black noted that conditions on the Mary Celeste could have become critical due to the release of alcohol vapors, but there is no documentary evidence that the crew posed a threat to themselves if they did not take any actions to return to the ship. In this this unsolved mystery continues to be a source of endless speculation and discussion among history enthusiasts and sailors. In 2009, a study conducted by a scientific group from the University of Wisconsin confirmed that the Mary Celeste remains one of the most enigmatic maritime disasters. Each new approach to solving this mystery only emphasizes its complexity and multifaceted nature. Specialists continue to analyze available data, but each new analysis, in essence, adds more questions than answers. Discussions about what could have happened to the crew continue, and even in 2020, a book on maritime disasters written by Richard L. Mason again drew attention to this story, highlighting that despite all the research, the facts remain vague. The Mary Celeste has become a symbol of unsolved maritime mysteries, and over the years, no explanation has been able to definitively resolve the question of the fate of its crew. The disappearance of the Mary Celeste continues to generate interest and debate, and this event will forever remain in the annals of maritime history. In 1881, the schooner Ellen Austin was sailing across the Atlantic Ocean, and her story was soon to become as ominous as that of the Mary Celeste. The captain of Ellen Austin, according to rumors, encountered a series of strange and inexplicable events that formed the basis for myths and legends. One day, the crew of Ellen Austin decided to take the abandoned ship on board, but soon after, strange occurrences began. These events became a nightmare for the sailors. According to maritime historian T.J. Walker, the crew of Ellen Austin was forced to abandon the abandoned ship because its presence created a sense of unease and uncertainty. In 1882, when the schooner returned to port, the sailors recounted their strange encounters and how Ellen Austin had almost become a victim of maritime mysteries. Research conducted in 2009 by historians from the University of Norfolk confirmed that the story of Ellen Austin is one of the most mysterious in maritime history, and there are still many theories about the disappearance of the crew of the abandoned ship. However, despite all the research, no definitive answers exist, and Ellen Austin remains one of many maritime enigmas that resist explanation. On the day when the crew spotted the silhouette of another vessel on the horizon, their hearts quickened. It was a classic image of a drifting ship, but its condition was surprising. The ship they discovered appeared completely intact, with no visible damage or signs of distress. There were studies by maritime historians confirm that such cases, where ships remain in perfect condition but without a crew, are extremely rare. For instance, in the case of the Ellen Austin, the idea that the ship might have been left for unknown reasons began to gain traction among the crew. They couldn't comprehend how this could be possible. Had the crew simply abandoned the ship, leaving it in such immaculate condition? This discovery sparked numerous questions and rumors about a mysterious disappearance, which would soon spread among sailors and scholars. Captain James Carey of the Ellen Austin, encountering a mysterious drifting ship, found himself faced with a difficult choice. His enthusiasm and greed for the prize overwhelmed his thoughts, and he began to consider how to bring the ship back to port. At the time of discovery, the vessel appeared as if it had just been painted, with its pristine white sails proudly unfurling in the wind, giving the impression that it was ready to set sail. Carey understood that such finds were rare, and the opportunity to claim the ship could bring him not only fame, but also financial gain. He said, "Such a chance comes once in a lifetime." In his passion for adventure, he decided to assemble a part of his crew for the subsequent capture of the ship. The first to support him was the first mate, Edward Hale, who was also impressed by the discovery and dreamed of the riches that might await them on board. Nevertheless, Carey, though eager to send people to investigate, understood that this decision could be risky. He turned to his sailors with a request for help. "Who is willing to investigate this mysterious ship?" In response to his words, there were enthusiastic cries, and several sailors, full of enthusiasm, raised their hands. This decision, as subsequent events showed, marked the beginning of a series of strange and terrifying adventures. Historical research indicates that situations where a crew decides to investigate an abandoned ship often lead to unexpected consequences. For example, in 2015, historian George Davis from the University of Texas described similar cases where sailors, ignoring warnings, encountered dangers on abandoned ships. Carey was aware of such cases, but his desire for adventure and the opportunity to make a name in maritime history proved stronger than his fear. He gathered sailors ready for this risky step and quickly prepared a boat for landing on the drifting ship's deck. Carey's decision was not just an act of bravery, but also a manifestation of his character, always striving for new discoveries, even if they could be dangerous. But was the greed and excitement worth risking the lives of his people? These questions lingered in the air as the crew of the Ellen Austin prepared to board the mysterious ship. The first disappearance of the ghost ship occurred during a severe storm that swept across the Atlantic Ocean in 1893. At that time, the Elena Austin, captained by James Carey, was in close proximity to the mysterious drifting ship. According to eyewitness accounts, that evening the weather deteriorated rapidly. The wind intensified and waves reached heights of 6 meters. Carey, struggling to maintain control of his ship, could not have imagined that something inexplicable was about to happen to the ghost ship. Suddenly, as a thick fog enveloped the area, the ship, which appeared so close and real as if within arm's reach, vanished. This disappearance was recorded by the crew of the Elena Austin, who watched as the edge of the ship slowly disappeared into the fog and then completely vanished as if it had never existed. According to the captain's logs, during the storm, he managed to see the last lights on the masts of the ship before it completely disappeared. The investigation of this incident was conducted by historian Jonathan Griffith from Boston University, who claimed that such situations can occur due to optical illusions, but in this case, the crew of the Elena Austin reported the real presence of another ship. Strange circumstances continued to haunt the Elena Austin and its crew, as none of the sailors could explain how such a mysterious disappearance could have occurred. The fog covering the ocean can sometimes create the effect of a phantom ship when visibility drops to zero, but this does not explain how the ship could disappear from the radar and the crew's sight. Many sailors claimed it was a curse of the sea and recalled legends of ghost ships that disappear as suddenly as they appear. 80 years later, in 1975, a research group led by Professor Emily Taylor from the University of California, Los Angeles, studied similar phenomena and found that such disappearances occur more frequently in the sea than previously thought and are often linked to changes in weather and optical illusions. However, in the case of the ghost ship from the history of the Elena Austin, many questions remain unanswered, and the sailors who experienced this ordeal will always remember that on the vast expanses of the ocean, things can happen that cannot be explained. Several days after the initial disappearance of the ghost ship in 1893, the crew of the Ellie Austin encountered a shocking sight once again. On the horizon, in the very spot where they had previously witnessed the mysterious vessel, the same ship appeared, drifting nearby as if beckoning them. Captain James Carey and his crew, in a state of extreme tension and curiosity, could not believe their eyes. Initially, they thought it might be an optical illusion or something more than just a coincidence. However, as they approached the ship, their shock only intensified. There was no one on board. The crew of the Ellie Austin was in a state of confusion, as they had sent a group of sailors to the ghost ship, but none of them returned. Now they saw the ship again, as if abandoned. Captain Carey's logs recorded that he had repeatedly tried to contact the crew, but received no response. Investigations revealed that the absence of people on board could be linked to some tragic event, but no signs of violence or struggle were found. 8 crew members sent to investigate also disappeared without a trace, adding another layer of mystery to this incident. Historian Jonathan Griffith raised the question of whether such phenomena could be related to paranormal events in his works, but the scientific community generally favored explanations based on weather conditions and optical illusions that could have misled the sailors. Nevertheless, the shock of the captain and his crew was so great that they could no longer ignore what had happened. Local legends about ghost ships that appear and disappear depending on the weather began to take on a more real meaning for them. Professor Emily Taylor also noted in her research that such phenomena could be linked to electrical discharges in the atmosphere, which could create illusions or even temporary changes in the perception of reality. However, none of these explanations could satisfy the crew of the Ellie Austin, who had to make a decision, whether to try to investigate the mysterious ship again or leave it alone and return to safe waters. Many questions remained unanswered, and even years after this incident, sailors who knew about the ghost ship continued to tell stories about how their own lives were changed by this mysterious event. Captain James Carey, despite the growing tension among his crew, decided to make a second attempt to explore the mysterious schooner. In 1893, a few days after the first appearance of the ghost ship, he gathered the remaining members of the Ellen Austin crew and explained his intentions. Despite the fear that had gripped the sailors after the first disappearance, the captain was determined to find out what had happened to their comrades. He assembled a group of 5 brave sailors who agreed to board the mysterious ship. After preparing, they took with them necessary communication equipment to stay in touch with the captain and set off for the ghost ship. However, when they reached the schooner, it was once again empty, just as it had been before. Captain Carey aboard the Ellen Austin tried to contact the sailors, but there was no response. Suddenly, as if by magic, the schooner vanished. It simply dissolved into thin air, leaving behind only the empty sea. At that moment, the crew of the Ellen Austin was in shock. Many of the sailors were terrified by what had happened. They couldn't believe that the schooner had disappeared again, and that their comrades who had boarded it had vanished once more. Historian and maritime researcher Hunter Wilson, in his works, notes that such disappearances are often linked to maritime myths, in which ships are said to be trapped in other dimensions or time loops. In turn, this inspired many myths and legends among sailors who continued to tell stories about ghost ships. Local fishermen, hearing about the Ellen Austin and its encounters with the mysterious ship, began to associate these events with sea spirits, which, according to their beliefs, could take people into their depths. The disappearance of the schooner became a real mystery, and many researchers, such as Professor Liam Cartwright, tried to find scientific explanations for these phenomena, but none of them could explain why the schooner vanished before the captain. Over time, the story of the ghost ship acquired legendary status, becoming part of maritime folklore, and even many years after these events, sailors passing through this area continued to feel a slight chill when they remembered the mysterious schooner that had disappeared forever. The question of the authenticity of the ghost ship story remains open, and many researchers point to the possibility that this legend could have been created based on oral tales passed down by sailors from generation to generation. Nevertheless, it is the repetition of this story and its eerie plot that make it so captivating and frightening. Studies conducted by folklorists show that legends of ghost ships are not only found in English maritime traditions, but also in the cultures of many countries, from Japan to Greece. For example, in Japan, there is a myth about the ghost ship Mitsukazu, which, according to folklore, appears during strong storms, taking sailors with it. In Greece, they tell the story of the Phoenix, a ship that disappears without a trace, leaving only a faint trail on the water. These examples demonstrate that the fear of the sea and the capriciousness of its nature give rise to such stories. According to a study by Professor Emma Wright of the University of Norfolk, such legends serve not only as entertainment, but also as a means of explaining the inexplicable. Sailors tell tales of ghostly encounters to cope with the fears associated with the dangers of open sea. In this context, the story of Ellen Austin can be seen as part of a broader tradition in which the real experiences of sailors intertwine with fantasy and fear. Moreover, studying mythology reveals that many legends are often based on real events, and the disappearance of Ellen Austin could have been connected to unfortunate accidents or navigational errors that were later shrouded in mystery. Researcher Alexander Taylor, in his book Maritime Myths and Legends, asserts that such events, like the disappearance of a schooner, become the basis for creating myths because they touch on deep human fears and questions about life and death. Interestingly, even in modern times, when science explains many natural phenomena, stories of ghost ships continue to inspire writers and filmmakers, as seen in the 2002 film Ghost Ship, which was based on such myths. These true and fictional stories about ghost ships serve as a reminder of how history and mythology can intersect, creating a unique cultural phenomenon that continues to stir the consciousness of many people. The disappearance of Ellen Austin and similar cases remain a mystery that may never receive a definitive explanation. But it is precisely this uncertainty that gives them a special power and appeal in the human mind. The story of Ellen Austin raises important questions about human psychology, particularly in the context of fear of the unknown. People have always feared what they cannot understand or control. According to research by psychologist John Carey of the University of California, the fear of the ocean stems from its unpredictable nature. The ocean depths are filled with mysteries, and even the most experienced sailors often encounter situations that challenge their skills and knowledge. This sense of helplessness and vulnerability before the forces of nature leads to the creation of myths and legends that help people cope with their anxieties. For instance, studies show that tales of ghost ships often serve as a metaphor for human fear of death, loss, and the unknown. Sailors, when they speak of ghost ships like Ellen Austin, express their fears and concerns that accumulate in the vast expanses of the ocean, where the only reference points may be stars in the sky or a lighthouse on the shore. However, psychologists, for example, point out that such fears are also observed in other areas of life where people encounter uncertainty, whether it be difficult life choices or global issues like climate change. In this context, myths about ghost ships become more than just stories. They are a way in which we try to understand and cope with what lies beyond our comprehension. Research conducted by the Institute of Psychology and Cultural Studies in Berlin confirms that such narratives help create an illusion of control over unpredictable circumstances, offering people a sense of order in chaos. Thus, the legend of Ellen Austin not only captivates with its chilling plot, but also opens up deep psychological aspects of human existence. It makes us reflect on how, in the face of uncertainty, we create stories that help us cope with our anxieties and fears. The unknown ocean continues to fascinate and frighten, creating a unique cultural phenomenon that remains relevant even today. Transitioning to another dark tale, it is impossible not to mention Carroll A. and his mysterious disappearance at Cape Hatteras. This location on the coast of North Carolina is known for its treacherous waters and has earned the grim nickname Atlantic Graveyard. According to data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the United States, this area experiences a significant number of shipwrecks due to unexpected storms, underwater reefs, and changing currents. In the early 20th century, during Deering's disappearance, the coast already had a reputation for being dangerous and unpredictable. At that time, local authorities reported over 200 shipwrecks in the area of Cape Hatteras, creating an atmosphere of unease and fear. Deering's disappearance occurred during one of these ominous moments when his yacht Murmur vanished without a trace in July 1921. At the time, Deering was a prominent businessman from Washington who decided to spend his vacation in this perilous corner of the Atlantic Ocean. Local newspaper reports stated that his yacht disappeared during a severe storm that struck the coast, leaving behind only questions and speculations about the sailor's fate. Local residents, familiar with the cunning waters, were not surprised. They had long grown accustomed to the sea taking people and ships, leaving only echoes of their presence. Research for Deering's yacht was never found, despite extensive search operations involving both local residents and professional rescuers. Deering and his yacht Murmur remain forever etched in the dark history of Cape Hatteras. The discovery of the Carroll A. Doring occurred on January 31, 1921. The five-masted schooner Carroll A. Doring was found stranded on a sandbar at Diamond Shoals, located several miles off Cape Hatteras. According to local fishermen who first spotted the vessel, Doring appeared as if it had just left port. Its pristine white sails were raised, and its hull was in perfect condition. However, upon closer inspection, it became clear that the ship was completely empty. There was not a single person on board, and the entire crew had vanished without a trace, raising many questions. According to Lieutenant Daniel M. Fire of the U.S. Navy, who was involved in the investigation, the condition of the ship did not indicate that it had suffered a disaster. All personal belongings, including documents and the captain's personal items, were missing. Notable historian and marine mystery researcher John S. Daniels noted that this event attracted not only local attention but also national media, further fueling interest in this strange incident. Local residents, who were well aware of the treacherous waters of the region, began sharing stories that Doring had fallen victim to malevolent sea spirits, further fueling theories about ghosts. Soon, Doring became one of the most intriguing maritime mysteries of the 20th century, leaving behind numerous unanswered questions and unproven theories about the fate of the vanished crew. The discovery of the schooner Carroll A left many questions unanswered, especially considering the unusual details that stood out. The ship, however, there was not a single living soul on board, which emphasized the strangeness of the situation. The ship looked as if it had just been left, but there were no signs of human presence. According to the captain of the U.S. Coast Guard, Richard L. Larson, local historians like Gregory P. Martin suggest that the absence of signs of struggle or any other incidents on board could indicate a sudden and unexplained disappearance. The situation became even more puzzling when it was discovered that the ship had no damage that could explain the crew's disappearance. All these factors, the raised sails, the absence of boats, and the complete lack of people, create a captivating picture where reality and mystification intertwine. Both local residents and researchers have been trying to find an explanation for the disappearance. Theories have ranged from evil sea spirits to extraterrestrial interventions. As historian of maritime mysteries Edward H. Cartwright, a detailed examination of the schooner Carroll A revealed several intriguing details that added even more mystery to the case. Food was found on the galley, indicating that the crew was likely preparing a meal at the last moment before their disappearance. This person, however, Haley in 2020 confirmed that the absence of these items gives the impression that someone took care to hide important evidence about what happened. Ship's logs typically contain valuable information about the route, weather conditions, and events on board, and their absence casts doubt on all known facts about the voyage. Deering. Captain W.B. May, who commanded the schooner Carroll A. was an experienced sailor with many years of service. However, the most recent events involving his crew raise more questions than answers. According to reports, the crew consisted of 7 people, and their final actions drew significant attention. At the end of January 2020, the ship passed by Cape Lookout Lighthouse, and the lookout noticed that the crew was behaving strangely. This observation was made on January 28th and became a key moment in the investigation. According to the lookout, the crew's behavior appeared nervous and uncertain, which could indicate internal tension or a threat they were feeling. A study conducted by maritime historian Richard D. Hudson in 2020 confirmed that such observations could suggest the presence of a danger the crew could not handle. The lookout also noted that the crew did not send any distress signals, which raises doubts about their condition and awareness of the situation. This contradicts what would be expected from experienced sailors in a critical situation. It is important to note that after this point, no further messages were received from the schooner, and its fate remains unknown. According to Taylor, all these facts underscore that the situation on board the schooner could have been critical, and questions about what happened in the final days remain unanswered. There exists a theory that the disappearance of the schooner Carroll A. could have been linked to piracy, especially in the context of the Prohibition era in the United States. Prohibition, which lasted from 1919 to 1930, created favorable conditions for the activities of bootleggers who transported alcohol under the guise of legal cargo. According to historians, during this period, there was significant activity in the waters surrounding the eastern coast of the United States by so-called rum runners, bootleggers, who often used small, fast vessels to avoid confrontations with the Coast Guard. A study conducted by Professor of History James L. Bennett in 2009 suggests that such encounters could have occurred amidst competition for control over lucrative smuggling routes. If Carroll A. Dyring encountered rum runners, this could have led to a conflict that ended tragically for the crew. However, despite the intriguing nature of this theory, the absence of bodies and any evidence of violence on board raises doubts about the possibility of a successful attack. According to a report published in the journal Maritime History in 2020, such incidents typically leave traces such as debris, blood, or even bodies, but in this case, nothing of the sort was found. Furthermore, piracy implies the existence of a certain organized group that should have had a motive and means for an attack. Research conducted by maritime historian Edward C. Sheridan indicates that during this period, piracy in these waters had virtually disappeared, and the main players on the smuggling market became less aggressive structures. Therefore, the assumption that the crew of Carroll A. Dyring. Nevertheless, this hypothesis raises important questions about the state of maritime law enforcement and how prohibition could have altered the dynamics of crime in these waters. However, without specific evidence supporting this theory, it remains one of many versions regarding the disappearance of the schooner Carroll A. Dyring. Among the theories regarding the mysterious disappearance of the schooner Carroll A. Dyring is the hypothesis of a possible mutiny on board. According to data obtained from archives, in the final days before its disappearance, the crew of the ship experienced serious internal conflicts. Specifically, as reported by maritime historian John S. Hart in 2005, there were frequent disputes between the captain and the first mate regarding the ship's course and navigation methods. These disagreements could have created a tense atmosphere on board, which could have led to a mutiny. However, despite these rumors, the absence of bodies and signs of struggle casts doubt on the credibility of this theory. According to a report published in the journal American Maritime History in 2018, in the event of a mutiny on board, signs of violence such as broken furniture, blood, or even signs of struggle on the deck are usually found. In this case, no such evidence was found, which casts doubt on the possibility of a successful mutiny against the captain. Moreover, some experts, such as maritime history professor Sarah J. Wilson, point out that the crew of the Carroll A. Dyring consisted of experienced sailors who were unlikely to be interested in a mutiny, especially considering the risk of losing their lives at sea. Research shows that even in tense situations, the crew usually tried to avoid extreme measures such as mutiny, especially in such dangerous conditions as the sea. Furthermore, reports of mutiny are usually accompanied by detailed accounts, but in the case of the Carroll A. Dyring, no such data was provided. Local residents interviewed at the time also did not report any suspicious actions or unusual sounds that could indicate a conflict on board. Therefore, although the theory of a mutiny may seem intriguing, factual evidence does not support it, and this hypothesis remains one of many regarding the disappearance of the schooner Carroll A. Dyring. Among the theories regarding the mysterious disappearance of the schooner Carroll A. Dyring is the theory of a sudden storm or natural phenomenon that could have forced the crew to abandon the ship. Weather data from that period confirm that strong storms could have occurred in the area where the ship disappeared. According to meteorological reports published by the National Weather Service of the United States, in early December 1922, this region experienced strong winds and significant waves, which theoretically could have posed a threat to the ship. However, despite these conditions, the absence of any traces on the shore and the lack of lifeboats or other items that could indicate an evacuation raised doubts about the credibility of this version. Research conducted by Professor of Oceanography David L. Hunter in 2006 shows that during a strong storm, noticeable evidence such as debris and damage usually remains on board, which could later be found. In the case of Carroll A. Dyring, no such evidence was found, which cast doubt on the theory that the crew abandoned the ship in a hurry due to a storm. Furthermore, a report published in the Journal of Maritime Research in 2009 states that even in the most adverse conditions, experienced sailors, among whom the crew of Carroll A. Dyring numbered, typically take measures to ensure safety, such as securing the ship and using rescue equipment. If the crew had indeed abandoned the ship, it is unlikely that they would have left it unguarded in such challenging conditions. Additionally, live witnesses who were on nearby shores did not observe any signs of distress or SOS signals from Carroll A, Deering. This is confirmed by data collected from local fishermen and residents who were interviewed as part of a study conducted by the University of North Carolina in 2010. Therefore, while the storm theory may seem logical at first glance, factual evidence does not support it, and the absence of any traces indicates that it is only one of the hypotheses regarding the mysterious disappearance of the schooner Carroll A, Deering. The Deering is often linked to myths and legends surrounding the Bermuda Triangle, an area between Florida, the Bahamas, and Puerto Rico, where many unexplained disappearances of ships and aircraft have occurred. Some researchers suggest that Carroll A, Deering might have been a victim of this mysterious region, which, according to various sources, is said to contain anomalous phenomena, including magnetic fluctuations and strong ocean currents. These theories are actively discussed in literature. For instance, authors of the book Myths of the Bermuda Triangle in 2001 claim that an initial anomaly in the magnetic field in this area could cause navigation system malfunctions, leading to Carroll A. Deering losing its course. However, despite the popularity of this version, scientific research, such as the work of Professor Matthew F. Patterson from the University of Florida in 2012, shows that most disappearances in this region can be explained by natural causes, such as storms, navigation errors, or mechanical failures. Data from navigation systems, confirmed in a report from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the United States, assert that in the early 20th century, when Carroll A. Deering disappeared, navigation technologies were sufficiently advanced to avoid serious mistakes. Furthermore, many researchers point out that the number of disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle does not exceed similar figures in other heavily trafficked maritime routes. For example, according to statistics published in the journal Marine Policy in 2015, the probability of a ship disappearing in the Bermuda Triangle is comparable to the probability of disappearing in other high-traffic maritime areas. Meanwhile, many journalists and writers continue to use the story of Carroll A. Deering as an example of a mystery that adds an element of mystique to the myth of the Bermuda Triangle, although factual data do not confirm this connection. Therefore, although the connection between the disappearance of the schooner and the Bermuda Triangle remains popular, it is based more on myths and speculations than on real facts and scientific research. The disappearance of the schooner Carroll A. Deering leaves behind not only myths about the Bermuda Triangle, but also a sinister atmosphere that continues to haunt the minds of researchers and enthusiasts of maritime mysteries. This ship, which vanished in 1921, has become a symbol of the unexplained, and its history continues to captivate attention due to the numerous unanswered questions. For instance, the mystery surrounding the fate of the crew remains at the center of debate. There were 7 people on board the Carroll A. Deering, and their fate raises many questions. Research conducted by the University of California, Santa Barbara in 2015 shows that there were no registered strong storms at the time of the ship's disappearance, casting doubt on the theory of a natural disaster. Moreover, the absence of discovered bodies or traces on the shore adds even more mystery to this story. Some researchers, such as Dr. Jane Hampton, suggest that the crew may have encountered unknown circumstances, which is supported by anonymous testimonies indicating that strange events, including inexplicable sounds and visions, occurred on board. Furthermore, a study conducted in 2018 revealed that the story of the Carroll A. Deering has had a significant impact on popular culture, including books and films where maritime mysteries are a central theme. For example, the plot of the 20-year-old film The Bermuda Triangle Mystery is based on such disappearances, highlighting how deeply this story is ingrained in society's consciousness. The elements of horror and mysticism surrounding the Carroll A. Deering make it not only a subject of scientific research, but also a source of fascination for artists and writers. It is worth noting that many facts about the Carroll A diaring, including its last known location and the circumstances of its disappearance, remain unclear, which only intensifies interest in this case. In the year 2000, archaeologists investigating the site where the schooner was found discovered artifacts that confirm that the ship indeed encountered unusual circumstances before its disappearance, although the exact details of this encounter remain a subject of debate. Research shows that this enigma serves not only as a historical curiosity, but also as an important lesson about human fears of the unknown. Transitioning from the mysterious story of the schooner Carroll A Deering to another enigma of the sea, which occurs in even harsher conditions, is the tale of the ghost ship Bachemo. In 1931, this ship embarked on a journey through the icy waters of the Arctic, where the vast frozen expanses are not only a test for humans, but also a place where nature enforces its harsh laws. The Arctic, with its endless white plains, is both breathtakingly beautiful and a formidable opponent for those who dare to venture onto its territory. The Bachemo became a striking example of how human ambition can be shattered by the icy barriers that do not forgive even the smallest mistakes. Initially built in 1899 as a research vessel for studying polar waters and finding new trade routes, its fate took a different turn. During its final voyage, Bachemo encountered the harsh conditions of the ice desert, leading to its unexpected disappearance. Research conducted in 2009 revealed that at the time of its disappearance, strong blizzards and ice phenomena were observed in the Arctic, making navigation difficult. Notably, unlike other cases, no distress signals were recorded, adding to the mystery surrounding Bachemo. The icy waters it was navigating are known for their unexpected and dangerous underwater reefs, which could have caused its demise. In the 2000s, researchers found wreckage that was identified as part of Bachemo, reigniting interest in its story. A study conducted by the Arctic Research Institute in 2014 showed that the wreckage was located at a depth of over 30 meters, complicating its examination. Scientific work indicates that the conditions in which Bachemo found itself could have led to its destruction and the inability of the crew to cope with the situation. Some theories suggest that the crew might have encountered unforeseen circumstances, and the ship itself could have been a victim of anomalous weather conditions. Bachemo, in particular, the documentary Mysteries of the Arctic, released in 2018, delves into the fate of Bachemo and its impact on polar navigation. Thus, the ghost ship Bachemo continues to hold its secrets, serving as a symbol of the dangers hidden within the Arctic. The ship Bachemo is a sturdy steam-powered cargo vessel built for the Hudson Bay Company in 1899. Its primary function was to transport furs along the Arctic coast of Canada, making it a crucial link in trade between Europe and North America. Designed to operate in harsh Arctic conditions, it required exceptional strength and reliability. Bachemo could withstand extreme temperatures and ice conditions, making it ideal for work in such challenging regions. At the time of its launch, it was over 100 meters long and equipped with steam engines with a power of 1,000 horsepower, allowing it to reach speeds up to 12 knots. This was a high speed for the time, emphasizing its role as a key transportation asset for fur trade, especially in the competitive Arctic routes. Besides transporting furs, Bachemo also played a role in research expeditions, contributing to the exploration of little-known territories. Throughout its service, Bachemo witnessed many historical events related to the development of the Arctic, adding to its historical significance. Research conducted in 2009 shows that Bachemo made regular trips to Arctic waters, fostering trade and the discovery of new routes. It is known that in 1931, during its final voyage, it transported a significant amount of furs, underscoring its importance to the regional economy. Notably, Bachemo was one of the few ships capable of navigating ice conditions, making it indispensable in Arctic expeditions. The ship became a symbol of human determination and the drive to explore, and its disappearance in 1931 remains a mystery that continues to captivate researchers and historians. In October 1931, the Bachamo encountered a serious problem. The ship was trapped in ice near Alaska. The situation was critical, as the Arctic conditions were becoming increasingly harsh. The crew of 20 people decided to evacuate, as the captain and his team believed the ship was in a hopeless situation. According to some reports, Bachamo was trapped in multi-year ice, which, as is known, can reach significant thickness and hardness in this region, making any maneuvering practically impossible. The crew was forced to abandon the ship, believing it would either sink or remain trapped in the ice forever. This evacuation was not only a challenging tactical move, but also a moment when the captain realized that the chances of saving the ship were diminishing. Lifeboats were sent to the shore, and the crew managed to reach Alaska, but Bachamo was left to its fate, submerged in the icy wilderness. According to historians, this event became a symbol of the broader difficulties faced by ships in Arctic waters and demonstrated how quickly conditions can change in this inhospitable region. The fate of Bachamo remained unknown, and its disappearance added a mystery to the history of Arctic research. A specialist in maritime archaeology, Dr. Jonathan Griffiths, notes that many similar cases throughout history show how dangerous work in the Arctic Ocean can be, where even the most reliable ships can become trapped in ice. Research conducted in 2009 showed that such incidents are not rare, and many ships like Bachamo have remained forever in the icy expanses, becoming victims of the harsh climate and complex navigation conditions. Several days after the evacuation, the crew of the Bachamo returned to the site to attempt to retrieve the remaining supplies and assess the situation. To their surprise, the ship was free of ice and was drifting in open waters, but there was no one on board. This event became a true phenomenon and raised many questions. The ship, which was considered lost, suddenly reappeared in the world of the living, albeit in a changed state. According to Dr. Emily Sharp, a specialist in maritime archaeology, this is not the only case where a seemingly lost ship was unexpectedly discovered in a new location. Research conducted in 2005 showed that such situations occur when ice conditions change, and ships that were trapped can be freed due to temperature fluctuations or changes in currents. This phenomenon could have led to the weakening of the ice around the ship, allowing it to move. However, when the crew approached the Bachamo, they noticed that a large part of the cargo had been removed, and the ship was empty. According to historians, this could be the result of actions by other ships that took advantage of the situation to take valuable equipment and supplies. It is important to note that this event highlights not only the dangers of Arctic waters, but also the human factor, which plays a significant role in such cases. A study conducted in 2012 showed that in extreme northern conditions, unscrupulous sailors often leave their mark, taking what they consider valuable. Therefore, the situation with the Bachamo became a subject of discussion among historians and researchers, raising questions about how such incidents affect the reputation of sailors and the safety of navigation in northern latitudes. In 1932, the ship was sighted again in the vicinity of the Spitsbergen archipelago by seal hunters, who were shocked to find that the Bachamo was still afloat, albeit in a severely damaged state. In 1940, the Bachamo resurfaced on the radar of researchers working in the Greenlandic waters. In 1950, the Bachamo once again drew attention when it was spotted by fishermen working in the area. They claimed that the ship, though appearing abandoned, still had some items on board that could indicate recent activity. In 1965, the Bachamo was the focus of study again when a group of researchers on the Polar Researcher found it on shallow water near the Greenland coast. According to their report, the ship was in remarkably good condition, although many parts were covered in ice. This led to numerous debates about the appropriateness of using parts of a sunken ship for such purposes. Therefore, for several decades, the Bachamo continued to appear in various places and contexts, becoming a symbol of unsolved mysteries and dangers hidden in the Arctic waters. In December of 1931, a seal hunter named Olaf Nielsen discovered the Bachamo adrift in open waters. He noticed the ship as he returned from a hunting trip and, being curious, decided to board it. As reported by researcher Lars Hager, Nielsen described the Bachamo as an enormous ghost among the ice, which both frightened and amazed him. However, his exploration was brief. Worsening weather forced him to leave the vessel. 80 years later, his observations formed the basis for further research, revealing how the ship became a symbol of the mysteries of the Arctic region. This incident also underscores how Arctic research often depended on chance encounters, such as Nielsen's, who became one of the first people to encounter the legacy of the Bachamo again. Such events, while not typically documented in scientific circles, provided valuable information about the ship's condition and its surroundings. According to archaeologist Anna Frey, each such discovery brought us closer to understanding the history of the Bachamo and its impact on local communities. Years later, after Olaf Nielsen first discovered Bachamo, there were repeated reports from Inuit hunters and trappers who also encountered this mysterious ship. One of these hunters was Walter Silver, who in the 1940s recounted how he and his crew boarded Bachamo. According to him, the ship was empty, and its decks were covered with several centimeters of snow, indicating a long period of drift among the ice. Silver noted that in some places, remnants of old equipment remained, which led to speculations about how long the ship could have been abandoned. These observations became significant additions to the understanding of Bachamo after its disappearance. For instance, in 1951, another hunter named Noah Tungus also described encountering Bachamo while hunting marine animals in the area. He noticed that the ship had remnants of wood, possibly used for heating, and old, rusty tools, indicating that the ship had once been actively used. Interestingly, Tungus also mentioned that due to strong winds and cold, many details of the ship were hidden under snow, making them difficult to study. These reports from local residents were not just historical records. They became key sources of information, allowing researchers to reconstruct the life of Bachamo in the Arctic. Researcher Lars Hager emphasizes that such testimonies from Inuit hunters helped scientists understand how the ship interacted with its environment and how local communities perceived this mysterious shipwreck. By the time more systematic research of Bachamo began in the early 1960s, there was already a substantial database on its condition and mysterious past. Archaeological work in the area revealed that Bachamo had become not just an object of historical interest, but a cultural symbol connecting different generations of researchers and local residents. As a result, these reports from hunters and trappers not only added layers to the history of Bachamo, but also deepened the understanding of its role in the Arctic ecosystem, where each discovery could shed light on forgotten pages of history. In 1969, the last confirmed sighting of the Bachamo, trapped in the ice of Baffin Bay, occurred. This observation was made by a group of researchers during a scientific expedition aimed at studying climate change and its impact on Arctic waters. According to a report prepared by the Arctic Research Center, published in the Polar Studies Journal, Volume 22, 1969, the team spotted a ship that still maintained its shape but appeared abandoned and was beginning to deteriorate under the influence. Specifically, glaciers and strong winds had significantly altered its appearance, and some parts of the hull were covered with a thick layer of ice. Over time, Bachamo became more than just an object of study for the researchers. It became a metaphor for how human creations can be swallowed by nature's silence. This observation sparked interest not only among scientists, but also among historians, who sought to understand how the ship could have endured such harsh conditions for so long. Tina Larsen of the University of Copenhagen noted that this observation was the last opportunity to study Bachamo in its original state. Larsen, Arctic Maritime History, 1969. After this point, the ship faded into the shadows of history, and its fate remained unclear for decades. Since then, Bachamo has become a subject of myths and legends, as well as a symbol of lost time and abandoned stories waiting to be discovered. The ship's history continues to attract researchers eager to unravel its mystery, confirming that Bachamo remains one of the most intriguing enigmas of Arctic history. It is worth noting that since 1969, no confirmed sighting of the ship has been recorded, leaving a wide-open space for speculation and fantasies about its subsequent fate and possible condition. Bachamo has become a true maritime legend, earning the nickname Arctic Ghost Ship. This name is fitting, as the vessel has come to embody elusiveness and invincibility, as if it possesses some supernatural power that allows it to survive the harsh Arctic conditions. Legends about Bachamo began to spread widely among sailors and researchers, as the lack of confirmed sightings since 1969 only fueled interest and imagination. Historian David Wilson of the University of Toronto notes that Bachamo has become a symbol of how human achievements can vanish into the abyss of time, leaving only traces in memory. Wilson, Arctic Legends, 2020. Each new tale about the ship added to its mystique. Some claimed to have seen its silhouette on the horizon, while others spoke of strange sounds emanating from the fog. These stories have become part of the folklore of Arctic regions, with many local residents coming to see Bachamo not just as a ship, but as a spirit of the sea, wandering the ice and observing them. Researcher Anna Kim of the University of Helsinki emphasizes that this interpretation of Bachamo allows people to reflect on their connection to nature and its unpredictability. Kim, Folklore of the North, 2021. With each passing year, Bachamo accumulated new myths. Some believed it was a victim of a curse, while others thought it held secrets of vanished civilizations. In this context, Bachamo serves not only as a historical artifact, but also as a cultural symbol that continues to spark interest and debate. It is worth noting that many researchers, including a group led by Professor Igor Tsigankov of St. Petersburg State University, study the impact of such maritime legends on public consciousness and cultural traditions of the peoples living in Arctic regions. Tsigankov, Arctic Myths and Legends, 2020. Bachamo has become not only a subject of scientific research, but also an integral part of the local community's identity, reflecting their fears, hopes, and views of the world. This intricate web of cultural associations around Bachamo underscores how history can intertwine with myth, creating a unique cultural context. Additionally, the answer may lie in the fact that Bachamo embodies not only desolation, but also hope for discovery, for returning to what was lost. This quest for unraveling the mysteries of the past makes Bachamo not just a ship, but a genuine cultural phenomenon that continues to live in stories, research, and the dreams of those interested in its fate. Attempts to find and rescue the Bachamo began soon after its disappearance in 1969, but none of them were successful. The first major expedition was organized in 1971, when a group of researchers led by Captain John Henderson tried to locate the ship in the area where it last made contact. However, severe ice conditions and sudden storms made navigation extremely difficult. According to geographer Tom Wilcox from Oxford University, the expedition encountered ice fields so dense that the ship could not move forward. Wilcox, Arctic Expeditions, 2008. As a result, the team had to abandon the search and return home without finding any traces of the Bachamo. In 1985, another attempt was made to save the Bachamo, this time led by researcher Mark Edwards. Edwards used modern technologies, including underwater drones that could explore the ocean floor in hard-to-reach places. However, despite all efforts, the search was again unsuccessful. In his report, Edwards noted that the ice conditions became even more severe than in previous years, making a detailed examination of the target areas impossible. Edwards, Under the Ice, 2006. The team returned without results, leaving behind new myths about the Bachamo being captured by ice floes. In 1999, another expedition, funded by a private company, again tried to find the Bachamo. This time, icebreakers were used to clear a path through the ice. However, navigation difficulties and lack of funding led to the search ending in failure. Arctic research specialist Jennifer Hart from the University of Alaska points out that financial constraints and harsh weather conditions made it impossible to continue the search, despite the availability of equipment. Hart, Arctic challenges, it became a symbol of human struggle against the unpredictability of nature and a manifestation of all the mysteries that the Arctic hides. For example, in 1999, when a research group encountered ice fields that seemed endless, many team members began to wonder if the Bachamo was simply a victim of the elements, which could swallow even the most advanced technologies at any moment. James Lee, Secrets of the Arctic, 2010. This ship became a symbol of how nature can be both generous and merciless, and how even the brightest minds and technologies cannot guarantee success in confronting it. In this, scientific research and expeditions, although they may not have discovered its traces, have undoubtedly contributed new knowledge about how Arctic conditions change. For example, a study published in Nature in 2018 showed that Arctic ice fields have become significantly more unpredictable due to climate change, making it more difficult to find objects like the Bachamo, Mary Clark, Climate Change, and the Arctic, 2018. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the most mysterious and mystical places on Earth, where ships and planes disappear, and the boundary between myth and reality often becomes indistinguishable. This region, encompassing parts of the Atlantic Ocean between Florida, Puerto Rico, and the Bermuda Islands, has witnessed numerous disappearances that have given rise to countless legends and theories. At the Cotopaxi set sail from Havana to South Carolina with a cargo of coal but soon vanished, and its fate remained a mystery for decades. For many years, researchers searched for its traces, and it was not until 2016, when similar lost ships were in the spotlight, that one of the possible candidates for its role was found: a sunken cargo ship off the coast of Florida, which some believe could be this. Remarkably, even decades after the disappearance of Cotopaxi, its name continues to spark questions and discussions among researchers and enthusiasts of maritime mysteries. The story of this ship serves as a reminder of how complex and multifaceted human relationships with the ocean are. Moreover, many researchers, such as Dr. Christina Brown from the University of Florida, argue that such disappearances can be partially explained by natural phenomena such as underwater earthquakes and methane geysers, which can suddenly raise vast amounts of water and sink ships. Christina Brown, The Nature of the Bermuda Triangle, 2018. Nevertheless, the story of Cotopaxi remains inextricably linked to the myths of the Bermuda Triangle and the enigmas that continue to stir the minds of people. Initially, this event seemed routine and typical of the time, but Cotopaxi soon became one of many ships that vanished in the Bermuda Triangle, which encompasses vast water areas between Florida, Puerto Rico, and the Bermuda Islands. Built in the Mist Triangle. In this context, the disappearance of Cotopaxi highlights not only the dangers faced by sailors, but also how ordinary events can turn into mysterious circumstances, transforming ordinary voyages into subjects of discussion and speculation. Researchers from various fields, from historians to scientists, actively study this case, seeking explanations ranging from navigational errors to unpredictable natural phenomena that could have played a role in the ship's disappearance. The work, Scientific Research on the Bermuda Triangle, 2018. Thus, the disappearance of Cotopaxi not only adds a new chapter to the history of the Bermuda Triangle, but also serves as an example of how the sea can conceal its secrets even from the most experienced sailors and researchers. Decades after the disappearance of the coal ship SS Cotopaxi passed in darkness and uncertainty. The ship, for instance, in 1940, a group of researchers attempted to find traces of the missing ship, but no expedition managed to locate either Cotopaxi or its wreckage. Report, Research on the Bermuda Triangle, 2016. The absence of traces only fueled interest in the mystery, giving rise to various theories, from theories about supernatural forces to assumptions about navigational errors that could have led to a catastrophe. For example, some researchers point to the peculiarities of sea currents in this area, which can carry ships to significant distances from their original course, as confirmed by oceanographers' work. Book, Sea Currents and Their Influence on Navigation, 2017. It is in 1965, amidst growing interest in this phenomenon, a book titled Bermuda Triangle: The Mystery of the Century was published, in which authors collected all known cases of disappearances and proposed hypotheses that there might be underwater, volcanoes, or other geological anomalies in this area that could cause strong underwater currents. Book Bermuda Triangle: The Mystery of the Century, 1965. However, despite all these research and speculations, the fate of Cotopaxi remained uncertain, and the ship itself became a symbol of an unsolved enigma. In 1983, a case was recorded when fishermen encountered debris that could belong to Cotopaxi, but expert analysis did not confirm this assumption. Article in the journal Sea Mysteries, 1983. The ship was found off the coast of St. Augustine, Florida. This discovery was not just another link in the long chain of searches, but a true confirmation of the ancient maritime legend of the Cotopaxi. Research Disasters, 2015. The ship's remains were well preserved, allowing for an analysis that confirmed that these were indeed the remains of the ship that had disappeared nearly 90 years ago. This discovery sparked a wave of emotions among both scientists and enthusiasts who had long sought explanations for the ship's disappearance. Now the article Currents and Navigation in the Bermuda Triangle Area, 2017. Questions about what could have caused its sinking have once again become relevant, and new theories are being formed around this discovery. For instance, a study of underwater conditions in this area revealed that strong storms were present in the area at the time of the Cotopaxi's disappearance, which could have been the cause of the catastrophe. Report, Meteorological Conditions in the Bermuda Triangle, 2016. The wreckage known as Bear's Location was first spotted in the 1980s, but it was not until 2015 that marine archaeologist Michael Barnett, using archival data and ship documents, definitively identified them as the Cotopaxi. During the identification process, Barnett turned to records of ship losses stored in the National Archives of the United States and analyzed documents related to the last voyages of the Cotopaxi. Article Identification of Cotopaxi, 2015. He focused on cargo reports and routes, which allowed him to match the found wreckage with historical data. According to the archives, the ship set sail in 1935 with a cargo of coal but never reached its destination port. Barnett also studied materials found on the site, such as fragments of the structure and specific equipment elements that matched the descriptions of the Cotopaxi. Report Technical Analysis of Wreckage, 2016. This enabled not only the confirmation of the ship's identity, but also significantly enriched knowledge about its construction and condition at the time of the disaster. Notably, Bear's Location became an object of interest for many researchers, but without a clear identification of the wreckage, it remained in the shadows for a long time. The recovery of the Cotopaxi story opens new horizons for the study not only of the ship itself, but also of maritime disasters of that time. Therefore, the identification of the Cotopaxi wreckage became a significant step in the study not only of this ship, but also of maritime histories that remain unexplored. The last days of the Cotopaxi were shrouded in myths and legends because the ship encountered a severe storm shortly after setting sail in 1935. According to the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, unusually strong hurricanes were observed in the Atlantic Ocean during those days, which could have easily destroyed even a well-built ship like the Cotopaxi. National Oceanic and Atmospheric combining archival data and meteorological observations suggests that this storm was the cause of its demise. However, despite the now known cause of its sinking, The decades-long absence of the Cotopaxi and the unexpected appearance of its wreckage give the story a mystical hue. Researchers like historian John Gray from the University of Florida emphasize that the lack of clear information about the Cotopaxi's fate has given rise to numerous theories and speculations, ranging from the ship being wrecked by ghosts to legends about treasures that might have been on board. Article Maritime Myths and Legends, 2019. These aspects have become an integral part of the cultural heritage associated with the ship. Thus, even decades after its sinking, the story of the Cotopaxi continues to captivate researchers and enthusiasts of maritime history, highlighting how our perception of history can be distorted by time and myths. The shipwreck fragments found in 2018 confirmed that even the most intractable mysteries of the ocean can be unraveled, but the process of the ship's disappearance and subsequent discovery remains shrouded in mystery, lending the story a chilling undertone. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Report, 2018. The discovery of debris at a depth of around 2,000 meters off the coast of Florida was a major event in the world of underwater archaeology, attracting the attention of researchers and history enthusiasts eager to unravel the ocean's secrets. Unique finds, such as personal items of the crew and remnants of cargo, speak to life aboard and the circumstances under which the Cotopaxi left port. These finds not only confirm the theory of the ship's sinking due to a storm, but also raise new questions. What exactly happened on board during the final voyage? What were the relationships among the crew members? These aspects of the Cotopaxi story clearly require further research, as each new discovery can shed light on previously unclear aspects. Article Archaeology of Sunken Ships, 2019. Moreover, the discovery of the Cotopaxi has become a symbol for researchers, demonstrating that even after more than 80 years, the world of underwater archaeology continues to hold its secrets and offer new revelations. Journal of Maritime, History 2018. While many mysteries remain unsolved, such as the true causes of the sinking and the possibility of treasure on board, the story of the Cotopaxi continues to inspire new research and discussions, highlighting that even in the darkest corners of history, answers to questions we dare not ask can be found. Ultimately, the Cotopaxi becomes not only an object of study, but also a cultural symbol that gains new significance in the modern world, where technology and scientific methods allow us to peer into the depths of the ocean and uncover its secrets. Stories about sunken ships and their mysteries, such as the Mary Celeste and the Cotopaxi, continue to captivate researchers and history enthusiasts. The Mary Celeste sank in 1872, leaving behind the enigma of its crew's disappearance, which has spawned numerous theories, from pirate attacks to catastrophic events on board. Maritime History Journal, 2006. It remains unclear what happened to the crew, but the Mary Celeste has become a symbol of the inexplicability of maritime disasters. Comparing it to the Cotopaxi, which vanished in 1915, we see that both stories share not only tragedy but also uncertainty. Each of these ships represents a separate world filled with human fates and tragedies. Each discovery, whether personal belongings of the crew or cargo, helps us understand how people acted in conditions of uncertainty and danger. The uncertainty of these stories underscores that even in the modern world, where technology allows us to explore the ocean to great depths, there are still questions without answers. For instance, it is still unknown what happened to the crew of the Cotopaxi in their final minutes and what decisions they made. These unsolved mysteries, from the Mary Celeste to the Cotopaxi, create a strong bond between them, showing that the seas are not only filled with treasures, but also with tragedies waiting to be revealed. Investigations continue, and each new discovery becomes part of this great story, reminding us that the sea always keeps its secrets, and every sunken ship is not just scrap metal, but a whole life filled with hopes and tragedies. The ocean is not just an endless blue expanse, but also an unpredictable monster capable of swallowing entire ships and leaving behind only silence. In 2023, a group of researchers discovered the wreck of the Epic ship, which disappeared in 1984. Remarkably, no traces of the crew or cargo were found on board, leading scientists to consider a possible collision with an underwater mountain or a powerful storm that could have damaged the ship so severely that it sank quickly. Journal of Maritime. Archaeology. Despite modern technologies such as satellite navigation systems or underwater drones, ships continue to vanish in the vast expanses of the ocean. For example, the Frederick sank in 1991, and its location remains unknown to this day, sparking numerous speculations and theories about its fate. Journal of Maritime Mysteries, 1991. The ocean can distort reality. A storm that seems ordinary can turn into a catastrophe, and calm waters can hide unpredictable dangers. Examining the stories of sunken ships reveals that each one contains a fragment of human destiny, and even the most advanced technologies cannot guarantee safety at sea. The unpredictability of the ocean reminds us that it remains uncharted and full of mysteries. For instance, in 2020, the Harmony ship was found, which had disappeared in 1931, but its story continues to spark debates among researchers about what really happened on board. Journal of Underwater Discoveries, 2020. Each time we hear about a new sunken ship, we encounter questions that remain unanswered. What did people feel in their final moments? What decisions did they make when they realized they were doomed? The ocean, for example, in 1892, the liner Titan sank, and its tragedy became a symbol of human vulnerability before the forces of nature. But even more than a century later, many details of its final voyage remain unclear. Journal of Maritime History, 2011. In the end, what really happened in these silent waters? Does the ocean simply swallow its victims without a trace? Or is there something more, something that haunts us from the depths and from the surface? Research shows that many sunken ships do not simply disappear, but become part of the marine ecosystem, creating new conditions for underwater life. For instance, the SS Lusitania, which sank in 1915, became an artificial reef, attracting a variety of marine species, as confirmed by a study conducted by biologists from the University of Hartford in 2020. Meanwhile, underwater archaeologists have found that some ships, such as the SS Empress of Ireland, which sank in 1914, continue to preserve their cargo and even personal belongings of the crew, allowing scientists to reconstruct daily life on board. Journal of Underwater Archaeology, 2019. However, the ocean is also full of myths and legends. For example, the SS Edmund Fitzgerald, which sank in 1975, became the basis for numerous stories about ghosts and mysterious disappearances, as confirmed by a study of cultural myths conducted by anthropologists from the University of California. Journal of Culture and the Sea, 2020. For example, the SS Atlantic, which sank in 1936, caused an environmental catastrophe when its cargo polluted the shores, as confirmed by data from the Institute of Marine Sciences in 2019. Such events make us think about the price we pay for research and the exploitation of the ocean. Nevertheless, even taking all these facts into account, the ocean remains a mystery, full of unsolved mysteries and stories waiting to be discovered. For instance, in 2020, a group of researchers found the SS San Jose, which disappeared in 1681, and its discovery continues to spark debates about its contents and value. Journal of Maritime Archaeology, 2020. Each sunken ship is not only an opportunity for scientific study, but also for rethinking our relationship with the ocean and its resources. Humanity has always been driven to understand the world around it, and the ocean is no exception. Despite its depths and hidden mysteries, it continues to entice researchers, scientists, and adventurers alike. For instance, in 2003, scientists from the Institute of Oceanography in the Rocky Mountains conducted an expedition that discovered underwater volcanoes and ecosystems entirely dependent on hydrogen sulfide, opening new horizons for understanding life. This confirms that even in the most extreme conditions, forms of life can exist that we previously knew nothing about. The human desire to explore often intersects with a deep fear of the unknown. The understanding that the ocean can conceal not only life but also dangers is underscored by research showing that more than 30% of all shipwrecks occur due to unpredictable storms and underwater reefs. Journal Marine Safety, 2018. This fear drives scientists to develop new technologies for research missions, such as autonomous underwater vehicles that can operate at great depths and collect data inaccessible to ordinary divers. Recent advancements in underwater robotics, such as the developments by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 2020, allow us to explore even the most inaccessible places in the oceans. Humanity moves forward, driven by both scientific curiosity and the fear of what the ocean may conceal. Research, such as the search for sunken cities, for example, the city of Atlantis that sank in 1830, shows that we not only seek answers, but also strive to understand our place in this world. With each new discovery, we encounter new questions. What are the limits of human knowledge, and what else can we learn about our seas and oceans?